This story is very meaningful. Everyone should hear it. Listen to Brian tell the story. My name is Stephen, and for 31 years, I thought I understood the people closest to me. I believed in my family, in love, in the woman I was supposed to marry. But one day I learned that everything I had built my life around was a lie. My mother, my fiancé, my own brother, each of them had a role in my betrayal. And the worst part, they thought I would just take it. I didn't plan to catch them that day. My crew finished early, and I figured I'd stop by my mother's house, where she and Lynn were supposedly planning our wedding. I didn't expect to hear my mother whispering poison into my fiancé's ear. I didn't expect to hear her tell Lynn that Wesley, my younger brother, was the better man. Stephen's just like his father, always working, never home. Wesley, though, he sees you, honey. He knows what you need. I remember standing there frozen. The blood drained from my face. I should have walked in right then, but I didn't. I waited. I wanted to hear Lynn's response to see if she would shut my mother down. Nancy, I don't know. Stephen's been distant lately. That was enough. That was all I needed to hear. I pushed open the door. My mother turned, her face smooth and unreadable. Lynn went pale. She clutched her phone like it was a lifeline. Neither of them spoke. So this is what wedding planning looks like? Mom straightened her shoulders. Someone had to say it, Stephen. You're never home. Always working. Wesley. Wesley this. Wesley that. I cut her off. It's funny how you never mention his 3 failed relationships this year alone. Lynn flinched. I turned to her. Let me see your phone. Stephen, it's not what you think. If it's nothing, show me. Her grip tightened. Silence. The kind of silence that says everything. I walked out. That should have been in the end of it, but it wasn't. The lies weren't just whispers in my mother's house. They were growing, spreading, consuming everything. Wesley called me 6 times that night. Text lit up my screen. We need to talk, bro. Mom called too. Obviously, being paranoid is costing me a nice woman, she had the audacity to say in one voicemail. My father, ever the peacemaker, left a message of his own. You know how your mother gets, son. She means well. Does she? Lynn, meanwhile, slept in the guest room. She said she needed space to think. Funny how that worked, but then Patrick, my closest friend, told me something that made my stomach turn. Wesley's been showing up at the coffee shop near Lynn's work. Every week, right around her lunch hour. Coincidence? I was done waiting for more innocent texts. The next time Lynn had a girls' night, I followed my gut. I drove past Wesley's apartment complex on my way to meet Patrick. Her car was there, parked in the visitor section. I sat in my truck, blood pounding in my ears. I wanted to be wrong. I wanted to believe there was some kind of explanation. But when I looked through Wesley's ground floor window, I saw her. Lynn, on his couch, leaning into him, her head on his shoulder. My brother, my fiancé, cozy as could be. I knocked, hard. Wesley opened the door, standing there in one of his ridiculous compression shirts, the kind that made him look like an extra in a bad action movie. Behind him, Lynn stood, wrapped in the sweater I'd bought her for her birthday. How long? I asked. She started crying, not guilty tears, just the kind people shed when they've been caught. Wesley puffed up his chest. Bro, we need to talk about this like adults. I cut him off. How long? Lynn whispered it. 2 months, I laughed. I was him. 2 months? And you expect me to believe it just happened? Stephen, she said, you're always working late. Wesley understands me. I shook my head, disgust curling in my gut. Understands you? The guy who still lives in a rented studio apartment at 29? The one who sells overpriced protein powder to college kids? Wesley's face twisted with anger. He threw a punch. I blocked it, shoving him back. Really? I said. My fiancé, and now you want to hit me? Real classy. I pulled out my phone, called my mother on speaker. Her voice was as smooth as ever. Well, honey, I tried to tell you. Wesley's always been the stronger one. Lynn needs a real man. I hung up, and then the fallout began. Lynn moved out, but not before taking everything she could. She left her engagement ring on the kitchen counter with a note. I never meant to hurt you. Mom arranged a family dinner. Wesley and Lynn showed up together, holding hands like high schoolers. She looked proud, like she had planned the perfect wedding. For them. But here's the thing, I wasn't sad anymore. I wasn't even angry. I was done. And if they thought I was going to just move on, they had no idea what was coming. Patrick was the one who suggested it. Ever look into Wesley's business? I had. Turns out Mr. Personal Trainer wasn't exactly playing by the rules. Those protein supplements he sold, he was buying them from a sketchy supplier, repackaging them in his garage. One anonymous tip later, and the fitness certification board had him suspended. But it didn't stop there. My mother, the queen of real estate, built her success on glowing reviews. Reviews that, upon closer inspection, were suspicious. Another anonymous tip. Suddenly, half of them vanished. Mom was furious. She stormed into my apartment, screaming about how I was destroying the family. I just sipped my coffee and watched. "You're just jealous because Wesley's a real man," she yelled. I chuckled. Real men pay their taxes. Mom, her face turned red. The neighbors recorded the whole thing. And Lynn, she started realizing Wesley wasn't the upgrade she thought he was. The man who understood her couldn't even afford their weekend getaway. She tried reaching out through Patrick. "I miss our conversations." Right. By then I had met someone new, Zoe, the receptionist at Wesley's old gym. The best part? At the next family dinner, I actually showed up. With Zoe. Wesley looked miserable. Lynn kept sneaking glances at me. Mom tried to steer the conversation away, but Dad for the first time spoke up. "So Stephen, how's work?" I grinned, got promoted. Supervisor. Company truck. Wesley lost it. "You ruined my life." I kept eating. Funny, I thought, you did that yourself. Lynn, in a final pathetic attempt, tried to mediate. "Stephen, can't we just move past this?" I raised an eyebrow. "What exactly are we moving past, Lynn? Your decision to choose a stronger man who can't even afford dollar store protein powder?" Mom, Wesley, Lynn, they all lost something. Their reputations, their lives, their carefully curated lies. Me? I won, and I didn't even have to throw a single punch. Wesley sat there, shaking with rage, his face red and his fists clenched like a child about to throw a tantrum. Lynn sat stiffly beside him, her eyes darting between me and him, as if trying to measure how much damage had already been done. My mother, on the other hand, was glaring at me with the kind of fury that only a woman who had lost complete control could muster. "You're unbelievable, Stephen," she spat. "Your brother and Lynn have found happiness, and you're just sitting there gloating?" I leaned back in my chair, stretching my arms. "Happiness? Is that what we're calling it now? Because it looks a hell of a lot like rock bottom to me." Wesley slammed his hand on the table. "You ruined my business," he shouted, his voice cracking under the weight of his own failure. "You think you're so smart playing these little games? You couldn't fight me like a man, so you went behind my back and snitched like a little—" "What?" I interrupted, smirking. "Like a guy who actually follows the law?" "Oh, my bad. I forgot. Real men commit tax fraud and sell expired supplements out of their garages." Wesley pushed his chair back so violently it scraped against the floor. He stood up, towering over me, chest puffed out like a peacock trying to assert dominance. "You want to take this outside, bro?" I laughed. "Oh, please, Wesley. The last time you threw a punch, I barely had to try to put you on your ass. Do you really want to embarrass yourself again in front of everyone?" I turned to our father. Unless, of course, Dad wants to step in and tell his golden boy to sit down. For the first time in my life, my father actually did. "Enough," he said, his voice tired but firm. "Wesley, sit down." It was a small victory, but I could see the impact it had. My mother's face twisted in shock. Dad had never once put his foot down like this, never challenged her or Wesley in any way. But now, even he had reached his limit. "This isn't just about you two," he continued. "This is about this whole damn family falling apart because of ICE's manipulation," and he glanced at Lynn, who immediately looked away. "Bad choices." "Bad choices," my mother barked. "Stephen has done nothing but tear this family apart. First, he ruins Wesley's business. Then he spreads lies about me, and now he's sitting here, smug as ever, rubbing it in our faces." "Lies?" I scoffed. "Tell me, Mom." Did I make up the fact that you tried to set my fiancé up with my brother behind my back? Or that Wesley's little business was illegal? Or that you've been cutting corners in real estate for years? Funny, because last I checked, those were all things you did to yourself. You're just bitter, she snapped, standing up now too. You couldn't keep your woman happy, so she left you for someone better. Lynn flinched at that. Her hands trembled as she tried to steady herself. I could see it now, the regret creeping into her expression. Maybe she hadn't expected things to go this badly. Maybe she thought she'd just slide into a new life with Wesley without consequence. But reality was hitting her like a truck. Someone better? I repeated, shaking my head. You mean the guy who can't afford rent anymore? The one who had to crawl back to you because he lost everything? The one who threw away his career over some get-rich-quick scheme? Yeah, Mom, real catch. Wesley lunged. This time, he wasn't aiming for my face. He was aiming to tackle me to the ground. But he wasn't fast enough, wasn't strong enough. I dodged, stepping to the side as he stumbled forward, nearly crashing into the table. Stop it, Lynn screamed, finally breaking her silence. We all turned to her. She was shaking, her hands clenched into fists at her sides. This isn't what I wanted, she whispered, her voice strained. None of this was supposed to happen. Yeah, I narrowed my eyes at her. What did you think was going to happen, Lynn? That you'd cheat on me and I'd just disappear quietly? That Wesley and I would hug it out and be best bros again? That Mom would somehow fix everything like she always does? Her bottom lip trembled. I thought, no, you didn't think, I cut in coldly. If you had, maybe you wouldn't have thrown away a future with someone who actually gave a damn about you. She opened her mouth to say something, but nothing came out. I'm done here, I said, pushing my chair back and standing. Have fun with your little family reunion. Oh, and Wesley, good luck finding a new career. Maybe Mom can pull some strings for you. Oh, wait, she's kind of got her own problems now, doesn't she? As I turned to leave, I caught a glimpse of my father. He looked at me, not with disappointment, but with something else. Something almost like pride. Maybe for the first time in his life, he saw what I had seen all along. I walked out, leaving them to their mess, their lies, their downfall. And for the first time in months, I felt free. As I stepped out of that house, the cold night air hit me like a breath of fresh reality. For the first time in months, I felt something I hadn't expected. Relief. Not anger, not betrayal, not sadness. Just the lightness of finally cutting away the weight that had been dragging me down. Behind me, I could still hear them. Wesley, seething, his voice hoarse from shouting. My mother, desperately trying to salvage the situation, probably blaming me for everything that had gone wrong. Lynn, silent, she had nothing left to say. She had already lost. I didn't look back. My car door shut with a satisfying finality, and as I drove off, I glanced at my phone. A text from Zoe popped up. How did it go? I smirked, shaking my head. Exactly how you'd expect. 3 months later, AIM had never been better. The promotion at work came with perks, more money, more stability, and a company truck that was a hell of a lot nicer than anything Wesley ever drove. I moved into a new apartment, one that wasn't haunted by the ghosts of my past relationship. And Zoe, she was something different, something real. She wasn't a rebound. She was proof that loyalty and respect still existed. As for the others, well, Wesley never recovered from the fallout. His personal training career was dead, and with his reputation in ruins, no one wanted to hire him. Last I heard, he was bouncing from one gig job to another, struggling to afford even the cheapest apartment in town. He had dreams of opening his own gym once, but with his name permanently stained, no investors wanted to touch him. Lynn? She tried to make it work with Wesley, for a while at least, but love built on deception is a house of cards, and it didn't take long for everything to crumble. I heard through mutual friends that she left town, looking for a fresh start, somewhere no one knew her name. No more soft landing, no more easy way out. She had to deal with the consequences of her choices alone. My mother? Well, she lost more than just her golden son's career. The real estate scandal spread faster than she could contain it. The agency cut ties with her and the high-profile clients she used to brag about. They all vanished. She went from being the most respected agent in the city to just another disgraced name in a business that moved on without her. She called me once. I let it go to voicemail. My father finally did what I never thought he'd do. He left her. He got tired of the manipulation, the control, the constant favoritism. Last I heard, he was living in a quiet place outside the city, finally getting the peace he never had in that house. They all thought I would be the one to suffer. They thought I would be bitter, broken, unable to move on. But here's the thing about betrayal. Once you see the truth, once you really see it, you don't mourn the people you lost. You realize they were never really there to begin with. And the best revenge? Living a life they'll never be a part of. What do you think? Did Wesley, Lynn, and my mother get what they deserved? Have you ever been in a situation where the people closest to you betrayed you? Let me know in the comments. And if you like this story, don't forget to like and subscribe for more insane real-life betrayals.